Tola sat on the cold floor, soaked in ink and dirty water, feeling more humiliated and alone than ever before. Vanessa and her friends laughed as they left. Immediately, the bell rang for the end of the school day. Tola couldn't bring herself to go home. She was too ashamed to face her parents, afraid they would see her ruined clothes and ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. So instead of heading home, Tola wandered the streets around the school, her heart heavy with sadness and pain. After school that day, instead of going home, Tola found herself walking back to the abandoned warehouse. This time, she was determined. She couldn't bear the pain any longer. She climbed onto a broken chair, tied the rope around her neck, and took a deep breath. As she was about stepping off the chair, the old weak wooden roof broke, and Tola slipped and fell to the cold hard ground below. Her head hit the broken concrete, and she passed out. For what felt like an eternity, Tola was in an unconscious state, unaware of the time passing around her. The abandoned warehouse was silent, a forgotten word on its own. But the leveled grass and the rope that dropped from her neck are witnesses to her fall, and nobody will notice, only if they were keen. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the quiet streets, a man named Mr. Abiola was driving home from work. He was tired after a long day, his mind focused on getting home to his family. But as he drove closer, something caught his eye. A small figure lying by the roadside, barely visible in the fading light. Concerned, he pulled over and approached the figure, his heart sinking as he realized it was a young girl, bruised and unconscious. Immediately, he carried her and put in his car and drove off to a nearby hospital. At the hospital, the doctors immediately rushed Tola into the emergency room. After a thorough examination, they found that she had no severe physical injuries aside from a mild concussion, but she was clearly in deep emotional distress. She was admitted in the hospital not just for her physical health, but for her mental well-being as well. Mr. Abiola took a few pictures of her and drove off to the police to report a found child. Meanwhile, back at home, Ronke was growing increasingly anxious. Tola had never come home after school, and as the hours passed, her worry turned into panic. Ronke had called the school, her voice trembling as she asked if anyone had seen her daughter, but no one had. She rushed to the school and saw that everywhere was shut down. Tola's classmate had already left for the day, and none of the staff knew where she was. Bamidele returned from his business trip that evening. He saw his pregnant wife in distress. "Babe, why are you so stressed? You know early pregnancy does not need stress. Please, what happened?" Immediately he heard what happened, he dashed out of the house, drove straight to the school. He met no one, and he drove to the street in search of his daughter, his mind racing with fear. Where could she be? He kept asking himself. They had already filed a missing persons report with the police, and as night fell, they were left with nothing but an awkward feeling. They both had sleepless nights, and just as the first light of dawn was beginning to break, Bamidele's phone rang. It was a call from the hospital. A young girl matching Tola's description had been brought in by a good Samaritan, and they needed the family to come as soon as possible. Bamidele and Ronke rushed out the door, their hearts pounding with a mix of hope and fear. When they arrived at the hospital, Bamidele and Ronke were shown to a small quiet room where Tola lay resting in a hospital bed. Her face was pale. Her small body seemed even smaller under the thin white sheets. Tears filled Ronke's eyes as she rushed to her daughter's side, gently stroking her hair while Bamidele stood by, his hand resting on Tola's arm, his heart heavy with relief and sorrow. Tola Tola slowly looked up. Seeing her parents brought fresh tears to her eyes, and for a moment she couldn't speak. She had never felt so ashamed, so broken. But as her parents embraced her, murmuring words of comfort, Tola finally let herself feel the safety of their love. Mr. Abiola, who had stayed at the hospital to ensure that the girl he had found was safe, watched from the corner of the room. His heart warmed at the sight of the family reunited. But as the doctor began to explain Tola's condition, a deep sadness lingered in his chest. It was clear that Tola hadn't just been physically injured. Something much darker had been weighing on her soul. After hearing from the doctors that Tola had likely suffered some form of bullying or emotional trauma, Bamidele and Ronke gently begged their daughter to tell them what had happened. Tola was hesitant at first, unsure if she could even begin to explain the pain she had been carrying. But as her parents held her close, assuring her that she was safe, the truth began to spill out. She told them about the bullying, the cruel words, the torment from Vanessa and her friends. She described the moments when they had made her feel small, worthless, and how the bullying had become unbearable. Finally, with tears streaming down her face, Tola confessed about the warehouse, the rope, and the dark thoughts that had crossed her mind. "I just wanted it to stop, Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how to make it stop." Ronke wept openly, holding her daughter close, while Bamidele stood by in silence, his heart filled with anger. Anger at himself for not noticing the signs earlier, anger at the school for allowing such cruelty, and anger at the world for hurting his precious daughter. The next day, Bamidele and Ronke decided that something had to be done. They couldn't let this go unnoticed. Tola wasn't the only child suffering in silence, and they needed to ensure that no other child would endure what Tola had gone through. Together, they went to Tola's school and demanded to speak with the principal. The school staff were surprised, realizing the severity of the situation, quickly called an emergency meeting. Vanessa and her group of friends were brought in for questioning, and the truth of their bullying came to light. It wasn't just Tola who had been targeted. Other students had experienced similar treatment but had been too afraid to speak up. The news of the bullying spread quickly, and soon the parents of the other children involved were informed. Vanessa's parents were horrified to learn what their daughter had been doing. They had no idea that she had been tormenting Tola and other students. In their shame and anger, Vanessa's parents decided to take immediate action. They withdrew Vanessa from the school and sent her to a strict boarding school, far away from the distractions and bad influences of city life. The other girls involved in the bullying were also suspended, and the school was forced to implement new, stricter anti-bullying policies. Bamidele and Ronke, with the help of a lawyer, took legal action against the school for neglecting its responsibility to protect its students. The courts ruled in their favor, awarding them compensation and ensuring that the school would take significant steps to prevent future bullying. With time, Tola began to heal, both physically and emotionally. She transferred to a new school, where she made friends who accepted her for who she was. The school environment was warm and supportive, and Tola slowly regained her confidence. Her parents continued to support her every step of the way, reminding her every day how proud they were of her strength and resilience. Though the journey had been filled with pain, Tola emerged stronger. She had learned the importance of speaking up, trusting those who loved her, and of knowing her own worth. The dark thoughts that had once clouded her mind were gone, replaced by hope and a renewed sense of purpose. As for Bamidele, he reflected on everything that had happened. His dream of providing a better life for his family had come with unexpected challenges, but through it all, he had learned that the most important thing in life wasn't success or wealth. It was the love and support of the people who mattered most. In the end, Bamidele's dream had come true, not because of the material comforts he had worked so hard to achieve, but because his family had grown stronger, closer, and more united than ever before. And so, Tola, Bamidele, and Ronke stepped into their new beginning, expecting a new child, knowing that no matter what challenges the future held, they would face them together with love at the center of it all.